this November seminar of the Group of Research, Science, Reason and Faith. And today it's my great pleasure to introduce to this audience Professor Karwasz, Grzegorz Karwasz, who is from Poland. He works at Poland University. Let me say some words about him and his career. He studied economics and physics at the University of Gdańsk. And during his student days, he was a member of the Polish Society of Students of the United Nations, acting for disarmament and peace. Regarding his research activities, in the period from 1995 to 2006, he was a researcher at the Instituto Nacional per la Física de la Materia at the University of Trento in Italy, and he also spent some shorter periods in other cities, in other universities, in Detroit, South Korea, always working in the field of atomic and nuclear physics. In 1996, he started working at the Institute of Physics at the Higher Pedagogical School in Słupsk. Did I pronounce well?
Very well.
Ray, wow, that's awesome. For Spanish, speaking Polish. And he also headed the Department of Spectroscopy. Since 2006, he's the head of the Department of Physics Didactics at the Nicolaus Copernicus University in Torun. And currently, he's also a member of the Program Council of the Józef Rotbalta Foundation. So as you may guess, he's a physicist, experimentalist, and he's going to speak today about this very interesting interplay between physics, metaphysics, and theology. So I think it's a very provocative title. So let's set about to listen to his presentation without further ado. So to you the floor. Thanks for coming, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Thank you, Javier, for the invitation to this wonderful place, this wonderful university. Well, as you can understand, the lesson will be very difficult. There will be a part which is easier, which I developed in Italy for secondary schools, but then a part is developed for theology faculty. So sorry if things are complex. A part will be in English, a part will be in Italian, a part will be in Polish also. So the outline, I will first define why physics, metaphysics, and theology. Why these three sciences exclusively. Then I will speak about physics, some concepts of physics like Big Bang. Then I put into physics also biological evolution. Then I will also speak about linguistics. Then I will speak about metaphysics, time and space, matter, outside matter, and I will give some examples of thinkers. Like in the bottom of this building, some thinkers, and also some very recent science, scientific results. Everything you will find on this page is already uploaded there, so you can take the whole lecture and read carefully what is given, because I give some quotations which are important to read. Well, the whole title and the whole lesson starts from the sermon of 79 by Cardinal Ratzinger, in which he said that in general a conclusion can be drawn that history of Christianity in recent 400 years, it means from Galileo times, is a continuous defensive battle in which step by step we observe a step-by-step retracting of successive statements on faith and theology. So Ratzinger says that faith is getting back, leaving the space for science. And this is the time that physics was founded by Galileo. And it's difficult to avoid an impression that we retreat into a void, into an empty space, in which the whole space of the scripture, of the Bible, will be occupied by the reason, by the science, not allowing them, it means the faith and theology, to exist anymore. So this is a really heavy subject. If Ratzinger, one of the biggest theologians, says that he's afraid that faith is going back, leaving space for reason, leaving space for physics, science, and we go into empty space. So this is a difficult subject. And another statement by Ratzinger is even heavier. Another statement is from the discussion with Vittorio Messori, 85, still before he became Pope, saying if there was no an original sin, if there was no first parents, Adam and Eve, if there was no original sin, so there is completely nonsense for the Christianity, because at this point there was no reason for Christ to come from heavens to earth and to sacrifice himself, he says. And the hypothesis of the evolution, there is no space after the original sin. At most, it is a symbolic, mythic expression indicating some imperfection that man is, who from the beginning walks into perfection. But accepting this vision means inverting the structure of Christianity. Christ is being brought from the past into the future. The salvation means simply walking towards future events, like the evolution towards a better world. Man is nothing other than a product which is still not perfect in time. There was no salvation at all, and there was no a sin which to be repaired, but only a certain omission, which I repeat, says Ratzinger, would be natural. So subjects are really, really difficult. If there was no original parents, no original sin, so the whole background for the Christianity is a problem. So, well, Salvatore in Italian, Savior, or just Reformer. So this is a really difficult question. Why three sciences? Why three sciences? I come back to Aristotle and I come back to St. Thomas. Because Aristotle, he wrote many things. He wrote on heavens, on its astronomy. He wrote on animals, this is zoology. He wrote on ethics. He wrote on everything. But then in metaphysics, he says in metaphysics, there are only three sciences, three theoretical sciences. And he says, physics, well, this is my words and then quotation from Aristotle. My interpretation is physics occupies with objects which exist in time and space, which can be theoretical, but exist in time and space. Then about mathematics, he says, mathematics deals with objects which can exist in space and time, but need not. A straight line is a concept. It can exist on a table, but it need not. And then he says metaphysics or theology occupies with things which do not exist in space and time. They exist, but not in space and time. And there it was. So from Metaphysics, book 6, there must be three theoretical philosophies, mathematics, physics, and what we may call theology, since it's obvious that it's divine, that the divine is present anywhere. It is present in things of this sort. And the highest science, theology, highest science, must deal with the highest genus. Those, while the theoretical sciences are more to be desired than the other sciences, this is to be desired more than other theoretical sciences. So he makes a graduation: physics, metaphysics, and theology. And then we go to St. Thomas. I also give you in Latin, which is more precise. The three divisions of speculative sciences indicated are physics, or natural sciences, mathematics, or divine science, or theology. So I'm using this distinction into just three sciences without offending any science, calling them, following Aristotle and St. Thomas, that these are theoretical sciences. I am an experimental physicist, but in physics we always deal with some concepts: energy, conservation, momentum, movement. These are theoretical concepts. So this division comes from Aristotle and St. Thomas, Well, you will find some of the concepts explained in two articles that I published on a common review by University of Pamplona and University Nicolaus Copernicus of Torun, which is called in Italian a constant movement of the borders. Why borders? Because borders usually overlap. There is always a transition zone between borders. On the border between Navarra and Spain, they still speak a little Basque, and they still speak a little bit Spanish. So there is an overlap. First part is physics, and next part is metaphysics. It will take a long time before writing a third part. So some crucial concepts. Some crucial concepts is, well, from physics. I'm speaking about physics now. That God created earth and heavens. The Bible says that God created cielos y la tierra. Earth and heavens. This is what Bible says. And then what physicists say, well, this is nonsense. Completely nonsense. It was Big Bang that started everything. On even worse, that world is ethereal. There is some cyclic world, or ethereal, and this was the famous condemnation in Paris at the University of Paris, 1277 by Bishop Tempierre. So one of the theses of professors of university in Paris at the time that there was no beginning of the world. And this was condemned. So another is that God formed, plasmated Adam from clay. Well, nonsense. Man evolved from monkey, so it's completely nonsense. And third, that God mixed languages. Babel Tower. No, this was evolution of languages. So we will explore these three subjects. In this part is a little bit easier. This part is a little easier, and these are the concept. Well, discussion between Aristotle and Plato. Eternal or began. Aristotle, he believed that stars can evolve, but he was not sure about the universe to be formed in a certain moment. So, and discussion is very old, coming from Greek. And then Giordano Bruno, Tegmark, and Hawking, and Javier asked me yesterday the question about cyclic universes, universes that existed before Big Bang. There's only one answer for this. This is the answer. This is the answer. This is the answer. From the point of the experimental physicist, we cannot verify, so for me, it does not exist. Not from philosophical point of view, from the point of view of experimental physicists. I cannot verify this. None of them gave a recipe how to verify a universe before a universe, so it doesn't exist simply. So now there is a very simple play for young people. Once we can try to be God. Once we can try to be God. We try to make a word. We can create a word from nothing. So what would be the scenario? What would you do for the first to have the word outside the window? What would be the first step? What do we need to have a universe? This is a play for secondary school pupils, but let's say I will ask a lady, what would you do the first to create the word? What is the most important to have the word? The first step to make the word outside. Well, it's easy. We need sun. First thing, we need sun. Then we need earth. Then we need some vegetation, probably. We need some vegetation. Then we need some shelter for man. Then we need man. Man is black not by the case. When they usually say that we also need water, so we have also water. Is it okay? Well, this is the reasoning that we would think how to make a word. If we want to describe it from scratch, from our brain, so first we need sun, then we need earth, then we need vegetation. This is the scenario, more or less. And then the Bible. Then the Bible says things like this. In principle, God created heavens and earth. Heavens and earth, no sun. The world was empty and desert. And darkness was above the deep. Darkness was above the deepness. And a huge wind blew over waters. So again, at the beginning, God created heavens and earth. And there was a darkness above the deepness. And there was a wind blowing above waters. Completely nonsense. Completely nonsense. So in fact, a comment to the Polish, and then God said, let's make light. And God saw that the light was good and separated light from darkness. This is the description we know by heart, everybody, 1,000 times. But this is really, really nonsense. Ceilings, heavens, and earth, and wind, and things like this. And God have seen, well, this picture before you know, but this is a picture from Venice. The picture of both comes from Michelangelo. This is late, 500 years ago. But this picture is 800 years old. This is from Venice, from San Marco, from main ceiling. And this is separation of darkness and light. Darkness and light. And God is not old like Zeus, but young and smiling. Why? Young and smiling. And then keeping something in left hand, we'll see it later. But I also bring the picture from Gerona, Creación, how is it, Tapas de Creación, which is even older, which is almost 1,000 years. And then we see waters which are mixed in a strange way, because God separated waters from below from waters above. Separated waters from below from above. And then God said, let's collect waters from below in one place and let's call it the sea. And then the desert place he called earth. So again, first created earth, and then he created earth again later. Well, this is completely strange. And this is again, he's young and smiling, and this is the best picture, because you will see later. This is from Monreale, 800 years old, again smiling, with a technical plan in left hand, and making planets above sun, probably. So I'm joking, if they knew Copernicus system at that time, that planets orbit above the sun, it would be wonderful. So let's make a sun and moon to give light to Earth. So this is the description, which is completely strange. This is completely strange, and then translation from Polish, from Palotinum Bible from 2003, saying that this is just story. This is storytelling. Don't take it too seriously. Don't take it seriously. Pierwsze to opowiadanie bardziej teologiczne i abstrakcyjne należy zestawić z drugim. It says in Polish, this is a fairy tale, don't take it seriously. This is because God wanted to say that you must stay at home on Sunday. That Sabbath must be holy. So this is official Bible in Poland, but you will find in any language the same comments. So now we come to physics, which is more precise, and one of the posters on the European, it was a European project on didactics on the track of modern physics. You will find everything on my site, and I start this story about modern physics from the title in the beginning, because in English language there are 3 Bibles of St. James, American and Catholic American, and all of them they start in the beginning The fourth word is already different, but three are the same. So in the beginning, well, I'm saying how the word was, I wanted to say it was created. No, we speak about physics, so I must say how the word began. Okay, how did the word begin? This is the picture of an apparatus that physicists use. This is an accelerator of elementary particles in Chicago at Fermilab, in which they study the deep structure of the nature, in which we study the deep structure of the nature. But this is not the accelerator, because the accelerator is a ring of 20 kilometers. This is one of the detectors. This is one of the eyes which are used to detect things, and this is a technician. So these are huge research projects. We do it very carefully. They are very expensive, but then we get the knowledge. What is the deepest structure of the nature? So what is the deepest structure of the nature? We know atoms. Well, we know particles of gas. If we smell, so they are particles which diffuse in air, then we can see separate atoms, which are 1,000 smaller. Then deeper structure is structure of atom and nucleus inside. So we go from a thin of a hair, 1 billion times smaller. And we study this, and then we know everything on these particles. It will be easier soon, but I just want to show you how physicists discover things. Okay, they discover things with great precision, because this is a collision somewhere in the atmosphere with some atom, and there are some traces, and you see traces below. They decay on two particles. So it was 53. Two Polish scientists discovered a particle which does not exist in the universe. It does not exist in a stable universe. This could be a component of the universe, but not now. Then in 1973, in two American laboratories, they discovered another particle, and you see a peak like this. A peak like this is usually something like $2 billion of experiments. A peak like this shows that another very unstable and heavy particle was discovered. Heavy particle, 1,000 heavier than components of the ordinary matter. Unstable, living a microsecond, 10 to minus 6, or even less. And then another experiment in one laboratory, this big, small structure is a Nobel Prize. This small structure is a Nobel Prize. And then the heaviest component, well, these are traces of particles in a collision, and again, Nobel Prize for this. So we know that we know very precisely the structure of the nature. So we know that particles that we are composed of, there are only three. Electrons, negative that we find here in the cable, these are electrons. Then inside us, there's an electron outside, and inside is a positive particle called proton, and neutral particle called neutron, and we know them with this precision. Mass, magnetic momentum, electric charge, we know them with huge precision. Electron is an elementary particle, but proton and neutron are not elementary particles. They consist of two smaller particles called quarks. Usually, when we speak about the matter, this is an electron, this is a point, this is a proton, this is neutron, it's always a point, and quark is always a point. If we look on Earth from the universe, it's also a point. So I give some physiognomy, some picture to these quarks. So these small dogs are quarks for us, and they must be in three colors, always in three colors. And then we cannot extract them from proton for some physical reasons. But we know, what I want to say you, that we know everything a huge precision. we can compose these three particles in different ways, and we get some stable or unstable bigger particles. So we are composed of electrons and then two quarks. One is with the tail down, it's down, up, up, so they are called up and down, up and down. Up is positive as a little bit lighter. Here the dimensions are proportional to the mass, to the fourth power, because it would not stay on the picture. They are proportional to, so, but then we have this unstable, this is charm, strange, charm, beautiful, and top, which is the biggest. But they exist only very shortly after Big Bang. Very shortly, I mean 10 to minus 12 seconds after the Big Bang. Top and bottom. Then they disappeared. Bottom disappeared, charm disappeared, and strange disappeared. Quickly. Now the matter is composed only of this. And then we know all the properties, charges and masses, things like this. Is not important. So resuming the components of the matter. In the simplest explanation, the matter consists of electrons, light negatively charged, elementary particles orbiting atomic nucleus, protons, positively charged, heavier, neutrons, the same mass. Atoms have dimensions 1/billion of millimeter, and nucleus is even smaller. We should also add some photons, I mean particles of light, but this is more or less that we can do. But at the beginning of the universe, there was a very strange matter. Okay, so this was atomic physics. In Turin, we have also astronomical observatory, and then we can look not deep into a very tiny matter, but very far to the universe. And then we can see some galaxies, some regions in which stars are formed, some dying stars. We can see things very far. How far? Well, it's difficult to say in kilometers. We can say it in units of time. In units of time is this, light years. We can look deep into 13 billion years before. This is far, but this is far as distance, but it's also very far as time. We look almost at the beginning of the universe. So what we see? First we see that some stars are formed and then explode, and stars did not form immediately, but some 380 million years after Big Bang. From February of this year, we know it with a big precision, but only from February of this year, because first stars were discovered. Traces of first stars were discovered. So not immediately. And then I must add that stars are formed mainly of hydrogen, water. So stars did not form immediately after Big Bang, but after a long time, one day, 380 million years. The universe is expanding. We can look very deeply. More red is the galaxy, the older is the galaxy. And then we can also see the velocity of this expansion. But at the beginning of the cosmic area, the question was the communication between satellites and Earth. So a big antenna was constructed, but there was a noise inside this antenna. People expected pigeons inside. But no, the noise was coming from every direction. The noise is coming from every direction all the time. The noise is passing through us. This is microwave radiation. And this microwave radiation comes, the first stars were 380 million years after Big Bang, but this radiation comes from 300,000 years after Big Bang. So this radiation which comes from all directions that we can see on a TV without, if we don't put an antenna. So this is a cosmic radiation coming from the beginning of the universe. It's everywhere. It's everywhere. What is the reason for this radiation? The reason for this radiation is exactly the reason for the radiation in this lamp. Okay, may I switch it off? Okay, if I switch it off, well, it takes some time to illuminate again because there is a gas inside, and then light must get outside the gas. It takes some time to make this discharge. It took some time to get light outside matter. It took 380,000 years to get light outside matter. So what was the universe as seen at the beginning from outside? The universe seen at the beginning from outside was like that in Venice. A black ball with yellow light getting outside. Yellow, exactly yellow. Because the temperature, we can give the temperature of 11,000 Kelvin, which corresponds to the wavelength of yellow light, 890 nanometers, things like this. We know all the details. Yellow light getting out of a black hole. And then the sun. The sun appeared very late. Sun appeared very late because stars are composed of hydrogen and helium. There is no carbon inside stars, there is no iron, there is no copper, there is no selenium, there is no uranium, there is nothing more heavier than helium and hydrogen. So a normal star would not allow for life. We need carbon. We are built of carbon. We need carbon. And carbon appears only, carbon and heavier elements, heavier than iron, appear only in a secondary life star. A star must die, must implode, and then explode again. And in this explosion, heavier elements than iron can be formed. Copper, selenium, uranium, everything what we need for life. So, before Sun, there was another star. We don't know which one. It exploded, and it exploded. Then again, we can give with a great precision. It exploded this in Spanish, it's 4 billion years. 4 billion years ago, exploded proto-Sun. There was a star which exploded. So, making it on a scale, there was one day, another day, and here between this and this, Sun exploded. So our vision of making the universe is completely wrong. Not Sun, the first. First, water, below and above. I mean, stars. No, first, light separated from darkness. I mean, microwave radiation. Okay, so these are the pictures of Mars taken by NASA, and this is picture of Venus taken by NASA. Okay, so, and smiling again, Dio disse, vi siano luci nella volta del cielo per distinguere il giorno dalla notte. Italian is more beautiful than English for the Bible. Also Spanish. So, not Big Bang. In principio, in the beginning, because who came with the first idea of the beginning, physical beginning of the world and expanding? Lemaitre was a priest, like Copernicus was a priest. So the two biggest revolutions in the mankind, in our thinking, were done by priests. Copernicus was a priest and Lemaitre was a priest. He was a mathematician. He solved the equation of Einstein, and he said, well, the universe must or expand or contract. But as we exist, it must expand, because otherwise we would not exist. So Lemaitre came with this solution of the equation written by Einstein, but Einstein was not able to solve his own equation. Lemaitre solved this equation, and he said, well, the world must expand. So, and the paper of Lemaitre from Nature, 1931, says, the world started from a single atom, but before this single atom divided into two atoms, there was no meaning for the space and time, obviously. Because if we measure the space, we need two objects. To measure the space, we need two objects. So, and he says, so space and time started a little before the universe. And then Einstein answers, this is the most beautiful explanation of the creation I have ever heard. These are words of Einstein, who was not born Christian. Okay, he was not born Christian. So the sequence of universe was quite complicated. In very first few seconds, the matter emerged, but this was very strange matter. Heavy quarks decaying, then protons, neutrons, then helium nuclei, and only later atoms. Then electromagnetic radiation separated from matter. Now with the expanding microwave, it's not anymore yellow light, but microwave radiation, and it is everywhere. So this is absolutely the first picture of the universe we can have. And then on the stars, and very, very late on the formation of Sun and Earth. Okay, but this is only part of the truth. So this is as far as physics works. But we know the velocity of the expansion of the universe. We know the velocity, the age of the universe, things are still wrong. Because it seems that in the last 13 billion years, universe expanded by a factor of 1,000, from the radius of 10 million years, light years, to 10 billion light years, by a factor of 1,000. But in the first 10 to minus 17 seconds, expanded by the factor 10 to 70 times. I asked my colleague, he is French, working in Toruń, cosmologist, I asked him, you are saying to me that in 10 to minus 70 seconds, this is the time we can't measure, the universe expanded by this factor, and he answered, it seems so. This violates every physical law, because the expansion of the universe cannot be faster than the velocity of light. Because it means if it is faster, so the conservation of energy is violated. Time can go back. Completely, physics we know collapses. So the conclusion is that in the first very moment of the universe, there was no physics. There was no physics acting. We call it inflation. You will find this picture everywhere, and you see this very beginning of the universe expanding completely and then going like we know. So we need metaphysics. We can't apply physics to this moment, to the very first moment. And then there is another point. That with everything we know, microwaves, X-ray radiation, gamma rays, photons, electrons, protons, quarks, and everything, that we know only 4% of the universe. Only 4% of universe, because there is 4 times more invisible matter than visible matter. Invisible matter which can act by gravitation, but we don't have a faint idea what it can be. Absolutely no idea. 4 times more. But then, with all this matter, because of gravitation, the universe would collapse. Would collapse in this time. Would not exist. So, but it exists. So there must be something which makes the universe expand. And this is called dark energy. And this is 4 times more than dark matter. 4 times 4 makes 16, 16 over 100. We know 4% of the universe. So between me and you, there are 16 entities that we don't know. These can be galaxies, this can be angels, this can be anything, but it exists in physics. This is a part of physics. This is completely invisible. We don't have any tiny idea, anything. Would be 10 Nobel Prizes to get this, but it must be. It's still physics. So, resuming cosmology and physics, in moment zero, a concept of times did not exist before. Then, in 3 minutes, formation of matter. Then, a matter, Earth, material objects, Earth, 3 minutes. Then separation of light, we can see the background and stars, and then only sun. What the Bible says? The Bible says, so formation of matter, then light, then first galaxies, and then Earth. What the Bible says exactly? First, cielo terra, matter, and this part which is not matter. Cielo e la terra. Fiat lux, light. And then grande volta il cielo, heavens. Heavens in the meaning of stars and galaxies, and only the stars. So this is the lesson I give for secondary school, saying that in the sense that there is no controversy between the Bible and physics, but in Bible we have another beginning of the world, and another beginning is with St. John. In principio era il verbo, in the beginning there was logos, and logos was the verb was by the God, and the verb was God. So I know also this. Don't be afraid. I know also this. So another translation of the Bible into Polish is not the wind blowing over waters, but the Spirit of God over the waters. I checked in the library in the meantime. In Spanish, you have also the Spirit of God over waters. It depends on the translation from the Hebrew. And then in Greece, I found this picture from 17th century, black angel and yellow angel. This is again separation. So things are not easy. Things are not easy. And then the question if God created Earth, or we come from monkey. I give some pictures which are very important to know. We can be on the same trunk with monkeys, but gorilla separated from this trunk. They separated from this trunk 9 million years ago. Orangs separated from our trunk 12 million years ago. And from that time, we don't have anything in common. Chimpanzee separated 6 million years ago. And they went a completely different way. So they separated, not we. But this is 20 years already that we know this story about genetics. Because our genome is something like 3 billion letters. Our DNA inside is something like 3 billion letters. It's very complicated. And it gives information to the body about everything, seeing, hearing, walking, everything. But there is only one function that is very important, is metabolism, using sugar to produce energy. This is extremely important. And this cannot be transmitted in a normal mode. Because if an error happens there, then the cell is dead. So this is a secondary way to transmit this information, and this comes only with mother, because this DNA is closed in ovulo. This DNA is closed in ovulo. This is closed in a piece which is called mitochondrion, which is an electrical power station of every cell. This is very simple, short, and this must be transmitted precisely. So we know from 20 years that everybody of us, the difference between me and you and you and you is only by 10 or 11 letters, over 3 billion letters. Over 3 billion letters, mitochondrial DNA gives the difference by 10 levels. From genetics again, that every difference happens more or less every 12,000 years. This is an error, obviously, but it happens only every 12,000 years. So it means that altogether we had a common mitochondrial DNA 120,000 years ago. This is not mine, this is from Wikipedia. You go, you write if mitochondrial, and this is the picture that we come. The differences are by few letters, and we can find the place that everything started. It started here, in some Central Africa, a paradise. Then exact studies, you see science, recent, Western Europe, Oceania, Asia, Eastern Europe, well, we can study everything. We can study in details, but going up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 differences. So genetics says 120,000 years ago, we had a common mother. Genetics says, not me. Then we go to like Spanish, Sardinians, Mediterranean branch. It's separated 8,000 years ago, only 8,000 years ago. And again, you have all details. You can go to science and check this. This is female. With male, it's much more complicated because we need to study all possible crossovers of DNA. But with huge computers, we can do this. Billions of operations, and then we had the same father, again 120,000 years ago. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9 differences in this kind of studies. So also the same Adam, genetics say yes. Then this is statistics. This is science, and we are subject to statistics. So this is statistics over some African population, and this is the probability, the age in which the same father appeared. Males, somewhere here, 100,000, and females more or less at the same time. These two distributions overlap. They overlap in time. So we had the genetic sum says common ancestors some 120,000 years ago. Then genetic similarities, this is a very good book, Michele Gazzanica, Humans, which makes us difference, which makes us unique. He says with chimpanzee we have 97% of DNA the same, because we breathe oxygen, because we see light, because we walk on gravitational field, because we use hydrocarbons. But this 2% which is different is enough to make a completely different person, a completely different metabolism. You can make 6,000 to 8,000 different proteins, and from the time of separation, the evolution of chimpanzee and man went in completely different directions. So Gazzanica is a very good book. But this is not the only argument that we are having something in common, because, yes, we are having something, because you have here in Spain, in Santander, under Santander, first pictures from prehistoric men coming from 20,000 years ago. The same pictures are from 30,000 years ago from Indonesia. Exactly the same pictures. There was no internet at that time. There was no explanation how made the same pictures. The only explanation is that they had the same brain as we and as Spanish 30,000 years ago. But we go more deeply in the history. 80,000 years ago, South Africa. There was somebody in a cave in South Africa making this picture, this mathematical picture. Obviously, it was raining, he stayed inside, and he spent some time making some signs. 80,000 years ago. So in other words, humans exploded immediately somewhere in Africa 120,000 years ago. A breath coming. Even in Darwin, we checked yesterday, Darwin finished his book. The breath of life went into few entities. This is what Darwin says. But then we come, with all this, we must come back to theology. Because evolution is against theology? No. Because Catechism of the Catholic Church, point 302, says that the creation was not done by God immediately finished and perfect. That the universe is still under creation. And this is called God's providence. So God is present now because creation goes on. So these are 2 points, 2 and 303, that you can read on the Catholic Catechism. Babel Tower. Again, with mathematics, we can make the differences between different languages, from Korean, Georgia, Spanish, and everything. And we go back. This is Indo-European, which separated 12,000 years ago, but 15,000 years ago, there was a common language everywhere on the continent. Again, huge computers, again, 3 billion operations, and words like mama, father, dog, and burning, we have the same. Milk not, because it comes later. So there was the common language 15,000 years ago. And you have the reference, you go there, and you check all details. But now, last 5 minutes, I come to metaphysics. Because we exist because of biology. Biology works because of chemistry. And chemistry works because of a strange fact. Because the components of the nature are only electrons, protons, and neutrons. There should not be sugar, fat, and alcohol, and oxygen. They come because of a strange fact. Because 2 electrons cannot stay. When you see a picture like this with 3 electrons, it's wrong. Because you can only 2 electrons on the first orbit. You need another orbit for next 2 electrons. So we have hydrogen and helium with 2 electrons. Not anymore. And the lid is separate. Because 2 electrons avoid each other. Absolutely avoid. They cannot stay in the same place. They cannot stay. Why? We don't know. We call it exclusion principle of Pauli. Well, that's great. Pauli decided that we can have life. Because we don't have. This is not even metaphysics. This is theology. This is not metaphysics because we can't get with reasoning. Human brain, it's not truth that hearing is here. Hearing is everywhere. Stanley Yaki, you will get books at Javier. Stanley Yaki wrote Mind and Brain. Brain is, and mind is the most complex structure in the universe. My thinking is everywhere in the same time. So this is immaterial. Then some thinkers, Copernicus. Copernicus was not that who said that Earth goes around Sun. Copernicus first said, Tanta nimirum et divina optima maxima fabrica. This is the biggest, the solar structure is the product of God. And then he says that independently how big is the universe, we don't know the limits of the universe, and probably we cannot know. We cannot know it because of physics. Newton, you will read explanation for the gravity. This is explanation for the gravity. Deus Israel, Deus Deorum, Dominus Dominorum, esse vivum intelligentum potentem, summe perfectum, omnia regit, and so on. This is explanation by Newton. This is what physics says, if life is possible. Yes, life is possible only here, in a very tiny region. So it's absolutely impossible for the physical world to have light. And then, intrinsically cryptic theology, this is my next article. But I want to say as the last word that at the beginning God created earth and heavens. If the description of earth is precise, so there must be heavens outside the matter. So the idea of Einstein to having parallel worlds or tag mark, trash, forget this. But this is a huge parallel world that we need shortcuts. The shortcuts cannot be material. So prayer, personal sacrifice, fasting, Lent, misericordia, cloisters, priests. This is our shortcut to the immaterial world, and I'm saying this as an experimental scientist. You will read the end. Everything on the internet. Physics is material world. Metaphysics is reasoning. We can prove this, but theology, and these are words of Kant. We cannot say anything about the existence of God without external grace. We can't say anything about that existence. This is Kant. Critics of pure mind. The end of critics of pure mind. So these are three sciences I told you, and the picture is, it seems that the frontiers are moving. When I'm flying from Seoul to Europe, there is this black and white part, okay? But this is not traveling, but this is Earth rotating. And I'm flying also, taking a picture. I shake my hands, so everything is moving. Again, thank you very much for the invitation. And so I'm very sorry for Ratzinger, for Cardinal Ratzinger, Pope Ratzinger, but this time he was not right. There was a constant movement in all directions. Thank you very much.
So thank you. I think we have some time for questions. After this suggestive and provocative talk, maybe we thank you for the effort to combine so many things. You said many things, but so I don't know whether someone wants to say something or have some questions to break the ice. So maybe some clarification, some initial clarification. From the point of view of physics, I would say that you still can have inflation, and I don't know whether you can speak about violation of physics or physical laws, because you could say that, it's true that we don't understand inflation, but current laws of physics, for instance, constancy of speed of light, could be derivative, something derivative from a more fundamental set of laws. So, you see my question? So
yes, I answer immediately. You see the mental procedure. Without experiment, with reasoning, we come to the conclusion. This is metaphysics. This is correct. This is correct, but this is still not physics. So metaphysics is the only way if we want to explain the time that there was no physics. We need metaphysics. We need this reasoning. So three sciences are on an equal footing, if not above physics, because with metaphysics you can get some indication what would be.
But you could still have some traces of different inflationary theories on the microwave background radiation.
Yes, but we don't have it right now. So like Big Bang moved from metaphysics to physics with Lemaitre. Big Bang, creation of the world, was first theology, then metaphysics, Aristotle and Kant, and then moved to physics. Now Big Bang belongs to physics, strictly to physics. In inflation we don't have any indication, so it's still not physics. But even if it moves to physics, then the question is, why different physical laws at the beginning? Again, remains in metaphysics or in theology, because God wanted to make a world. a little bit joking in the whole speech. In the whole speech, I'm a little bit joking. Then the end of the sermon of 79, the full title is On Creation, Original Sin, and the Sense of Salvation. This is the whole sentence. I just took a sentence which belongs to me, to physics. I need to give an answer saying about physics, and I'm saying, well, Cardinal Ratzinger, you are right, we don't know everything. Sorry, but we don't know everything. We must say, mea culpa, I don't know everything. I'm still using metaphysics. So this is provocatory at this beginning. Obviously, about very complex things, we go to theology. So the sense of this talk is also to say that there is essentially the unity between the three sciences, like in time of Aristotle. But physicists must learn a little bit philosophy, and theologists must learn a little bit of physics. So this is the sense.
Other questions?
No, that's something I've always been talking about. We talk about the age of the universe. When we talk about the age of the universe and we say it's like, I don't know how many years ago, but it's obviously that there was not the concept of years. We cannot apply the concept of year before there was sun and earth. So I was always thinking, what are we talking about when we talk about time, when there was no...
Okay.
So we measure time.
This lesson started with my Italian friends from Comunione e Liberazione, who asked me, how do we know that God created earth in one day? This was the question. How do we know that in one day God made this or that? Well, we can say one day because 300 billion or 300 million years doesn't matter much. Okay? So from the point of the Bible, the division into days is correct. Because on a logarithmic scale, 300,000, million, and billion does not make difference. But then from the scientific point of view, I can answer you. Because looking into distant galaxies, we can identify the lines of hydrogen. Hydrogen emits light and give exactly 4 lines invisible. 4 lines invisible. This hydrogen emitted this light 13 billion years ago. If they are exactly in the same position, so exactly the distance and time is exactly the same 13 billion years ago. So we can apply the measure of today, because it seems that physical constants did not change in 13 billion years. Barrow, English mathematician, physicist, theoretical, wrote a book about constants of nature, and it seems that we can apply the clock of today down to 13 billion years. It seems. Okay, but from the point of view of things happen, it can be called one day. From the point of view of things happen. Because to make first galaxies, the process needed 380 million years. The process needed. To make to make oxygen on Earth, we needed 4 billion years before getting enough oxygen on Earth. It was produced by algae. It was produced by vegetation. So we needed first vegetation without oxygen, and only later oxygen. So mammals were possible only 60 million years ago. Continuous creation, like the Catechism says.
Other questions?
Can I make the question also, having the microphone? And thank you, Greg, for the presentation. I'm really impressed by the quotation of Aquinas that you use. And I think this 3 levels of abstraction is really something important to understand the relationship between different sciences. If we compare the science to the tortilla, Do you agree that we have like different parts of the same tortilla, or we have 3 levels of tortilla, and that we can say that theology is all? So Aquinas says that doing theology means to contemplate the world sub ratione Dei. It's not to have one part of tortilla. It's to look at tortilla as a whole, but with some focus, very special focus. So we can say that we have different languages in science which are analogous, compatible. Or it's a correct view of the science and the ideal of the university. It's the first point. And the second, it's about evolution. For theologians, for us, the question of evolution is as a challenge. Also, if we understand, or how to understand better, the question of suffering between original sin, because I agree that this is a very important point to understand Christianity. Without original sin, because we don't understand the salvation and many other things. So, from your perspective, do you see here tension about suffering before original sin, in dinosaur epoch, for instance, or not? There is no problem.
Okay, first point is about tortilla.
Before
Well,
lunch.
St. Augustine said that a man of faith, he did not say theologist, a man of faith, it's me, because I belong to the Catholic Church, a man of faith, while discussing with a mathematician, physicist, must be well prepared, because otherwise he will make the faith ridiculous, not himself. So in order to defend the faith, we must be very well prepared on everything, on physics, on St. Thomas, on Aristotle, and on the Catechism of the Catholic Church. We must read everything to be prepared for this discussion. So there is no superiority of theology. Sorry, Piotr.
No, it's not about theory. It's just
well, this is divine. This is divine science, as said by Aristotle. We can agree with this because Aristotle is common to the whole Western world. Aristotle is common, and he says divine science or theology. This is Aristotle who says this. So this is a divine science treating with the most difficult entities, not objects, entities, most difficult. God, angel, grace, sacraments are the things really difficult.
But let me explain that, for instance, for Aquinas, the notion of theology is not from Aristotle, because he used Sacra Doctrina as a name for science that receive light from divine revelation. And for Aristotle, it's some kind of natural theology, so our reflection on the world. So there is the difference. But
yes. Yes, for sure. For sure, Aristotle was almost
another context.
Aristotle is almost 3,000 years ago. From his time, we know a lot. From the time of St. Thomas, the whole physics was born. So a lot of St. Thomas can be moved to physics, should be moved to physics to make ridiculous St. Thomas. We must say he was genius without experiments to say this, but now it's in physics. And obviously we have a lot of theologians, not saying about Ratzinger, who is, for me, is biggest after St. Thomas. And we still need to read him. It took us 700 years to read St. Thomas. It will take us 500 years to read Ratzinger.
So just to support you in the claim that there is no border.
No borders. Moving.
It's not a part of tortilla which belongs to theology, another to science, and another to mathematics.
It's moving all the time in all directions. Moving borders. In Italian, progredire, not progresso. Vuol dire avanti, andare avanti. Progredire. Avanti, indietro, destra, sinistra, progredire. Movement, continuous movement. And then
another evolution, if you could say
about evolution, well, I don't bother much about dinosaurs. The meaning of suffering belongs to us. And the only distinction between my article on the rereading Aristotle De Anima, the only conclusion is that what makes different between us, our soul, which uses electrical signals, and animals, is that our soul is immortal. I cannot prove this because it does not belong to physics. Nobody came from other sides saying that his soul is immortal, but the conclusion of experimental physicists is that the only difference is that our soul is immortal. But this is theology, so it's not me and him.
Okay, so I think that now it's a good moment to finish this discussion, and well, let's hope to read all these questions in your article, in your upcoming article. So let's thank the speaker again, and thank you for it.
Thank you very much.
Very well.